Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning on our Thanksgiving weekend. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Sam McCoy, and I'm so pleased to be here with you this morning. I've co-opted this opening part of the welcome from Suzanne because I have a little task I'm going to give you in a moment. So hold that thought. But let me do the official reminders first that if you have an electronic device with you, now is a great time to make sure that it is silenced as we begin our service. And whether this is your first time through our doors, your 10th, your 100th, your 1000th, we are so grateful that you are here with us this morning, because having all of you is what makes this place the sacred place that it is. We also, as we gather this morning, want to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. Before we get started this morning, like I said, we are going to greet each other, but I'm going to give you a little task and a little joke to start, because we're going to have several jokes as we go through the service today. The task I'm going to give you is that I want you to think about if there's a question that tugs at you in your spiritual life. Is there something that sort of pulls you forward on your journey, something you grapple with, that you might be willing to share at the microphone later in the service? So just play with that in your head. We'll come back to that later. And before I send you to greet your neighbors and say hello to each other online or here in the fellowship hall, our opening joke of the morning is, why did the UU cross the road? To help the chicken find its spiritual truth. So please greet your neighbors. Take a moment. That's true. You put a little bit of a circle around you there.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. So nice to see so many of you here. I just wanted to bring your attention to some of the things in our announcements this morning. First and foremost, we have so much to be grateful for with these Music at the Ridge series. It's just been so lovely, and Nancy has done such a wonderful job of bringing it to us. Just wanted to call your attention to the next one, which is going to be on the 3rd of December, C. Somberg and the Sound Travelers. It sounds like the perfect outing to squeeze into your holiday month. And we have just a little taste of this wonderful group to give you to entice you to join us.
Yep.
And that's all you get. For more, please join us on December 4th. Pardon me, December 3rd. I apologize. December 3rd at 4 p.m. It looks like it's going to be just a really, really fun time. So we hope to see you there. Just a few more announcements to call your attention to. The Mitten Tree. The Mitten Tree is going to be up. The Children and Youth Ministry team invite you to take home a paper mitten from our Mitten Tree. It is out in the front there, and each mitten has a gift request. You purchase the gift and bring it back to the church or the Universalist Congregation of Danbury, and we will take them over in early December. And lastly, which was our holiday party. That's coming up this coming Sunday, December the 3rd. And please, we'd love to see you all there. We'll be having some music and refreshments and decorate the holiday tree. It'll just be a wonderful, wonderful time to spend time with all of you. So, yeah. Yes, please. Come on up.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a quick announcement. So next Saturday night, we have Movies with a Message. And I just wanted to let you all know, in addition to some other short movies, we're going to be showing our very own Lucina Fisher's The Dads from Netflix and having some discussion on that. Unfortunately, Lucina will be traveling, but she's left us with her discussion guide. So I just thought that could be a nice little ad.
Okay. So, while I light the chalice, please join me in saying the chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is
Covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. So please join us in our opening hymn, our hymn of welcome. 'Tis a gift to be simple. Feel free to stand or rise in body or spirit. I invite you to join me in our unison children's affirmation. And so if you want to follow along, you can put your U's in the sky. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. This morning's story is a video that we are going to watch. Realizing I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head. The story is called Any Questions, and it's by children's author Marie Louise Gay.
Sometimes I daydream about when I was young. I was a very curious child. I always had a million questions about everything. Do trees talk? Where does rain come from? Why do cats have whiskers? Can I be a dog when I grow up? The list was endless. When I meet children in schools or libraries, I see that nothing has changed. Children are as curious as ever. They ask me questions all the time. Lots and lots of questions. And why not? If you don't ask questions, how on earth will you get any answers?
How many books do you make in one day? Do you have a pet rabbit? I do.
What inspired you to write this book? How many blue caterpillars do you have?
Can you draw a horse?
What's your favorite book?
Are you Stella? Can you write a story about me? How many books have you written? Have you ever touched a snake? How did you learn to draw?
Where do your ideas come from?
What is your favorite color?
Can your cat fly? Mine can.
Do you draw with a pencil? Do you have a hamster? I have one.
I don't have any questions. I know everything.
Where does this
Let's see. I don't have a hamster or a rabbit, but I do have a goldfish. My favorite color is purple, and sadly, my cat can't fly. Where does a story start? Now that's a good question. A story always starts on a blank white page, like this. If you stare long enough at a blank piece of paper, anything can happen.
And as is our tradition, I invite you to join us in a round of this little light of mine. One of the ways we build our community here and share our stories is to share our milestones, whether they're the things lifting us up and buoying us through our weeks, or maybe they're concerns we have and sorrows we're working through. So we'll begin by doing silent milestones. The bowl is up here on the table. Nancy will play some quiet music for us. And if you are online and you'd like to acknowledge your silent milestone, please feel free to just type an X in the chat box so we'll know to be thinking of you. So let's begin with our silent milestones first. A few moments of quiet reflection. We can sit with what we heard, sit with what we're thinking in our own minds and in our hearts. And then Nancy will take us out of that silence and we'll sing Spirit of Life. So our reading this morning is a little bit untraditional. And I want to give credit to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Toronto, because they have a wonderful page on their website that has a whole plethora of jokes about UUs. So here we go. So we have a joke that has one question but two answers. So the question is, How many Unitarian Universalists does it take to change a light bulb? So here's, just, you want to offer an answer? Sure.
1 to hold the bulb and 6 to turn the ladder.
Joe said 1 to hold the bulb and 6 to turn the ladder. That is good, and that is in the vein of the first answer I'm going to give you. So here's answer number 1. It actually takes 300. 12 to sit on the board, which appoints the nominating and personnel committee. Then the 5 are on the nominating and personnel committee, which appoints the House committee. The 8 on the House committee have to appoint a light bulb changing committee. And then 4 are on the light bulb changing committee. 1 who chooses to actually screw in the light bulb, and the other 3 of the 4 give their opinion on what they witnessed in that process. And after the light bulb is in, you need 100 more individuals to complain about the method they used, another 177 to debate the ecological impact of using that particular light bulb, and at least 1 congregant who says that back in her day, a lit chalice was quite enough. So that's answer number 1. The second answer to this question is that the congregation releases a statement. And they say, we choose not to make a statement either in favor of or against the need for a light bulb. However, if in your journey you have found that light bulbs work for you, that is wonderful. You are invited to write a poem or compose a modern dance about your personal relationship with the light bulb. And you may present it next month at our annual Light Bulb Sunday service. In that service, we will explore a number of light bulb traditions, including incandescent, fluorescent, LED, 3-way, long life, and tinted, all of which are equally valid paths to luminescence.
Okay, we are generous people, and through our generous giving, we help to sustain each other by making sure this congregation has what it needs to serve our members and our work in the community. If you are with us for the first time, your presence is your gift to us. Members and friends, please express your generosity by using the link or QR code that is posted in the chat or projected on the screen. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love.
Many of you know that I've spent more than 20 years working with middle schoolers. My sweet spot seems to be with 7th and 8th graders. Occasionally, though, I end up covering classes or doing special programs with 5th and 6th graders. And while those 10 and 11-year-olds often have a very sweet nature and are incredibly earnest, they ask a lot of questions. And I mean a lot of questions. Their regular teacher can leave what appears to be the most carefully scripted and scaffolded assignment with incredibly detailed instructions. But then the questions began almost immediately. Should I write with a pen or a pencil? Do I write my name on the left side of the page or the right side? Should I just write my first name or do I need to write my first and last name? Will we have to turn this in at the end of class? Can I work with a partner? Does spelling count? And there have been countless times where I've left those classrooms with the younger kids and thought to myself, bless their regular teachers, because I don't think I could do that all day. And recently I've been wondering if Unitarian Universalists serve a similar role kind of among our modern US religions, because we also ask a lot of questions. And for today's reading, I obviously chose to poke a bit of fun at the reputation of Unitarian Universalists. This wasn't meant to minimize those philosophical questions, our spiritual exploration, or our democratic process. And I want to make that clear. Today's message isn't meant to mock anyone or the seriousness of the issues with which we grapple. When I encounter these UU jokes, I usually have a good laugh, but then I try to figure out where the grain of truth exists that prompted the joke in the first place. And I'm hoping that that's how those of you here today will take it as well. So we'll circle it back again later to that idea with the jokes. But as I'm wont to do, the first place my brain goes when I think about the questions UUs are asking is with our history. If we look, and focus primarily here on the United States where we are, we know that Unitarians themselves were organizing in the 18th century. And what they were trying to decide is if the Christian idea of the Trinity made sense. Their core questions involved whether the God they believed in was a unitary figure and or how that divinity might show itself in our earthly existence. Was Jesus the Son of God incarnate? Or was he a regular man who himself asked a lot of good questions? As for the Universalists, they developed a little later in our history, and they kind of had their heyday in the early 19th century. And their core questions revolved around universal salvation. Why would a benevolent God create humans only to condemn some of them to eternal hell? And from both of these perspectives, both of these sets of questions, we can see why our Unitarian and our Universalist forebears were seen as radical and existed primarily on the edges of the mainline Christian practice at that time, because they weren't just tweaking a worship sequence or toying with the idea of the vernacular versus Latin. They were both questioning the core tenets of Christianity. There's no doubt that today spiritual seeking is a key part of our practice. And for those of you who attend UU services regularly, I'm going to guess that an openness to spiritual searching is probably what drew you here in the first place. Those philosophical and spiritual quests, however, are challenging. Some religious traditions hand participants clear guidelines, clear practices, while UUs are continuously redefining and reconsidering the foundations of our community covenants. And no two congregations manage themselves in quite the same way. We are a faith with full congregational polity. We have a board of trustees, but how many members should it have? That's up to us. If an issue comes up within the congregation, leaders can create committees to address them. Or maybe it should be a task force. Or maybe it's a working group, right? We have to think about the words we're using. We hold votes on things. Sometimes we hold votes to decide when the next vote is going to come. And we won't even talk about Robert's Rules of Order today. My brain can't wrap itself around that. It wasn't too many weeks ago that Reverend Tony raised the question of whether there's a word, a noun to describe a group of UUs, like in the vein of like a parliament of owls. And my own child sitting over there, his immediate response was debate club. And most of us who were present, yeah, okay. What do you, we're improving something here. Oh my God. Okay. He's offering a disc for those who are online. He's offering a disclaimer, that he did that based on things he heard around him. Okay. But where I'm going with that is that most of us who were present that day, we sort of chuckled like you all did just now. And I think that's because we know there's like a little seed of truth there in that reply that he gave. But for a moment, let's stick with this idea of practices and handling change. UUs vary not only from one congregation to another, but even from week to week within a congregation, you could see something very different if you show up. And in spite of the fact that UUs know this variation exists, our sort of typical human nature pushes us to crave the familiar and to crave what's comfortable. And once a congregation falls into a routine, some congregants may find it difficult to see those familiar sequences evolve or adapt to new circumstances and new times. When we're faced with a change, where is the line between valuing the tradition and maybe just being a little stubborn? There's also the question of who leads or preaches in a Sunday service. And I struggle even with what word to use there. Is it preaching? Is it leading? Is it presenting? Is it something else that I haven't thought of? Some congregations have ordained ministers and others are lay-led fellowships. UUCD currently has an ordained UU minister on staff, but we've gone through phases in the history of our congregation where we've been fully lay-led in past decades. But nowadays, when the pulpit is open, kind of like today, there could be all kinds of folks standing where I am. We might have UU ministers from different congregations. We might have ordained clergy from other traditions. We may have visiting speakers who are not religious leaders at all. And then, of course, there's lay presenters like myself. And those variations can raise the question of who should be up here at this pulpit. And is there a should? Do we appreciate the variety that gives us, or would we prefer some predictability to what we're going to get on a Sunday? And perhaps more importantly than that even, what do we do when we don't like what we've heard from the pulpit? How do we sit with that? And how do we consider a message that wasn't exactly what we were expecting or didn't fit what we thought belonged in a UU congregation? And UUCD, like so many other groups, also values the work that extends beyond our walls here on Clapboard Ridge Road. We engage regularly with questions and concerns related to social justice. How are we promoting our values in the wider community? Where and how can we find partners among other religious groups, especially those that line the road here on Clapboard Ridge? What phases of that work do we prioritize? How do we pursue the work with limited financial resources? And that list of questions can begin to feel paralyzing if you let it just stretch on indefinitely. But what I'd like to do now is bring this idea of the questions back to those of us here today in the hall, as well as those listening online. Early in the service, and I know not all of you were here, so we'll loop you in now. I asked everyone to think about whether they have a spiritual question that they grapple with. Is there something that you ponder, something that pushes you on your own personal philosophical journey? And so what I'd like to do is have us share those questions for a few minutes. And if you are here in the fellowship hall and you'd like to come up to the floor mic, I invite you to just make your way up here and share your question. If you're with us on Zoom and you'd like to put your question in the chat, I'd be happy to read that. And if you're here and getting up to the microphone doesn't feel good to you, just raise a hand. You can call out your question and I'll speak it into the mic. So would anyone like to share a question? Come on up. You can just, okay.
I feel a bit weird that a child has to lead this. So my question is there a definitive or even just like reliable way to tell what the right thing to do is? And if not, what's the point of having a conscience at all?
All right, who wants to go next? Go on. And if I'll just point out, if you come up to the floor mic, it has this lovely little handle on it. You can just slide it up and down without having to move the mic itself.
I'll follow that up with I struggle with what's the right amount of work to do for social justice. How much work, and how do you know when it's enough?
What are some of the ways in which I can more fully live into being of service in a hurting world?
From the time I was a young child and was reading, I realized that I don't believe there is a God. I have believed that all my life, and I'd like to talk to other people about it.
How do we undo the wildfires that have destroyed our forests?
Oh, yeah, come on up. Yeah, we don't even need to raise hands. Just make your way up. I'm also keeping an eye on the chat if any of our online participants want to weigh in.
Good morning, Joe Gelati. I want to just talk about one correction in the order of service. The chair yoga class is scheduled for 2:30. That's been changed to 2 o'clock from now on. And Sherry's on vacation, so we didn't get that changed. So it's 2 o'clock if anyone is interested. On the subject of spirituality, I've wrestled with a paradox about spirituality for a good part of my life. There's a very difficult component of spirituality. And there's a very simple component of spirituality. So the paradox is, it's very simple and it's very difficult. My other thought about questions, which I've learned in my life, in my spiritual journey, on the spiritual path, slipped and fell down many a times, is that, and I would ask every one of you to remember this. Every time you ask a question, every time you ask a question, it will always beget another question.
My name's Carl Tramontana, and I retired from the New York City Fire Department on the EMS side after about 30 years. And luckily for me, I had very good partners. And most times after our most difficult calls, usually a cardiac arrest or something really dramatic, we would sit and talk about, why did this person die when we gave the exact same drugs, got there as fast as we possibly could, to the other one who we were able to survive? Why did that happen? So raised Catholic in the days where everything was a secret, the priest was back to everybody because we couldn't see this. And then over time that turned around. I had a big falling out with my religion at the time. I said, none of this makes any sense to me based on what I'm seeing every day at work. And early on in my life, I became a UU. I met Nancy, and that's how we raised our daughter Julie, because it didn't seem to make much sense to me what I saw. It didn't seem to be any fairness or justification about why this one survived when we did exactly the same thing, same age, same gender. And we would sit in the ambulance after the call, after we restocked the ambulance, to get ready to go out on our next call. And if we had the time, we would talk about it. If we had a call right after that, we couldn't. But by the end of the day, we would be finished and go upstairs to the locker room and sit around and start talking about this stuff. And if we didn't do that, a lot more people would have left that service really quickly, because some of the stuff that you see is pretty horrific. But I still wonder about that in my life, and I'm much happier being a Unitarian Universalist than having to remember the priest with their back to me. Or if you talked during communion, sometimes the priest would slap you in the face. So that stuck with me for many years. Thank you.
I'm Cheryl Edelin. I'm not sure that I can say this in a way that makes sense, but I'll try. As beings who have given up whether or not there is a God, or whether there's a heaven, or whether there's a hell, what is the role of spirituality?
I want to share a question that did come in online from Lois and Jerry, who wrote, why do we lose friends in a previous church from a previous church family when we leave to join another church or community that has different views or beliefs? Well, I know, right? The way I set that up, you might. I want to make. Are there any other questions anyone wants to share? Joe, another? Oh, yes. Joe came prepared for today. Yeah.
I can't resist. For a number of years, and if you look in your order of service on the second page, it says spiritually speaking. And I would just like to say to the congregation here and to those watching at home, everyone raised a lot of very good questions this morning, very valid questions. Questions that can be tormenting to a lot of people. Questions that can take a lifetime to try to ferret out an answer. Well, if anyone would like to pursue it seriously or in the future, beginning in January, which is only a month and a half or something from now, whatever it is, we're going to be starting it up again, spiritually speaking. And it's designed to answer many of the questions and many of the valid issues that people brought up today, many of the perplexing problems that people go through a lifetime asking themselves and really not able to come up with something close to a satisfactory answer or something that works for you. So if any of you might be interested in exploring the possibility of gaining more understanding to your spirituality, your spiritual path, there is something available here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. Thank you.
You're back. It's okay. You could go quickly.
Mine is not quick.
Okay.
Is yours quick?
You're there. Why don't you just go and then
So many of us, or at least some of us, have heard of the concept that proof denies faith, and without faith I am nothing. I in this sentence is referring to the Judeo-Christian God, but I believe we could substitute that for any sort of religion or spirituality. And if the purpose of bringing proof to it is to bring rationality to it, and that would defy faith, then faith is irrational, and asking these questions is further asking for proof or rationality. So one could question the purpose of asking these questions at all.
Thanks, kid.
I didn't foresee following that path.
Yeah. Neither did I.
And I was going to lightheartedly say that when I first came to this congregation, someone shared with me a very serious joke, and that is that we're a denomination who have questions for all your answers.
Squeeze that little handle. Yep.
My first question is always, am I brave enough to speak? My second one is, I enjoy so many traditions. I really enjoy like the beauty of spirit and the joy that it brings me. And how do I bring that into my life in a way that makes sense and is respectful? And when is it taking from somebody else? And when is it just celebration? And then I would say the third one is, I enjoy the celebration of spirit. So I'm always asking, like, when is it okay to just do that? You know, when can we just kind of stop asking and just kind of revel in the joy?
Hi, my name is Truus. What I'm struggling with is the wars that are going on at this time. It is just total misery. It's slaughter. I don't need to go into details. I'm sure that everybody is aware of it. It goes by the thousands of people, and everybody is talking about it. Doesn't seem much is resulting in a peace. And if there is a God, you know, because God is supposed to do good things. And I don't understand it. So, and it's getting from bad to worse. So that's my question for today. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. I'm Susan, and I struggle believing in God with God, and then sometimes I believe, sometimes I don't. I guess I'm agnostic. But what do atheists believe? They have to believe something. There has to be an explanation to them, or they try to figure that out, I hope. But that's it. What do atheists believe? Thank you.
In the order of service, there's a part that says to seek and speak the truth in love. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And what defines truth and authenticity is that from our past conditioning, our perceptions, is it a knowing? So there are questions there on that.
We're cutting you off after
this one is quick this time.
Okay.
As a response to that last question, truth is another form of proof, which ties back to my second thing I said.
Okay.
As a community that embraces many meanings, but recognizing that meaning is based on experience, and experience based on content, and content based on the forms it's set in, why are we every Sunday in the same format in a world of so many different possibilities of experience?
When I was working on this over the past week or two, I anticipated that we'd have a number of questions, that there would be no shortage from the people in this room. And I was right. You did not disappoint me. And I did not plant that one here to keep it going. He did that all on his own. But no, I do not have the answers to your questions. They're not hidden away somewhere. And like, I think it was Val who said it, and Nancy had said this joke to me when she knew I was working on this, that Unitarian Universalism can be a place where people come to have their answers questioned. And so I think we wouldn't be doing our jobs as UUs if we tried to just start handing out answers to anyone who comes along. Our fourth principle tells us that we seek a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And under the new proposed Article 2 revision with the covenant of shared values, I see this as being part of our interdependence and our transformation. So this is ongoing. I do believe that the reason all those jokes about UUs and their picky predilections exist is because people recognize that in spite of the fact that we might come across as a little fussy sometimes. We are earnest, we are heartfelt in our desire to do right by each other, to wider humanity, to the natural world. We know that wisdom is diffuse. Brain researchers tell us that the greatest learning occurs when we stretch ourselves and we try something outside of our comfort zone. All of those times something in a service may have made us uncomfortable or challenged a previously held understanding was probably when we were all growing the most in our spirituality. And I think many of us also believe that the wisdom that comes through exploration is better done in community. And this goes back to like what Carl was saying before. We ask the questions together. We may not get the answers, but we feel a connection, a sacred connection. We feel our common humanity. And I would go so far to say that those feelings may be more satisfying than the answers themselves. So this is why I'm grateful for the questions. This is why I asked you to share your questions a little while ago. And I think that when we hear that we're all grappling with our own quandaries, some of them are very similar, some of them are unique, it reminds us that we're not alone in that search. Community matters because whom you search with may have a greater impact than what you search for. And perhaps that UU back at the beginning crossed the proverbial road because there were some other UUs on the other side. In that spirit of community, the title of the song says it all. Come, sing a song with me. It's number 346. The words will be on the screen or in your hymnal.
Join me, please, as we extinguish the chalice. The words are right over here. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of humanity, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
It's all